They say the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. My fiancée's greatest trick was convincing everyone she was an angel, especially while she was sleeping with my cousin in my bed. She was planning a wedding, but I was planning a funeral for her reputation, his future, and their entire web of lies. My name is Ethan, and for the last 5 years, my world revolved around a woman named Jessica. And for 28 years, my life included my cousin, David, the man who was more like a brother to me than my own. One was the love of my life, the other was my blood. I discovered they were sharing a bed behind my back, in the house I had bought for us. The betrayal was a poison that should have killed me. Instead, it transformed me. It turned me from a loving fiancé into a cold, meticulous strategist. This isn't just a cheating story. This is the story of how I let my cheating fiancé and my treacherous cousin walk into the perfect trap, and how I used their own celebration as the stage for their execution. Before I tell you how I destroyed them, you need to understand who we were. You need to understand the agonizing depth of the trust they shattered. David wasn't just my cousin. He was my anchor, my confidant, my shadow. We grew up together, navigated the chaos of our large, boisterous family in Los Angeles, California. We were inseparable. When we were 20, he got himself into serious trouble, gambling debts to some very dangerous local characters. He called me in the middle of the night, terrified, convinced his life was over. I didn't hesitate. I drained my entire college savings account, every cent I had in the world, money I'd saved for my own business, and I gave it to him to make it right. I never told a soul, not our parents, not our friends. We're blood, David, I told him, looking him straight in the eye as I handed him the stack of cash. Your problems are my problems, always. He cried, embraced me fiercely, and swore he would spend his life repaying me. That was the unbreakable bond I believed we shared. A bond forged in crisis and sealed with sacrifice. It was this raw, foundational memory that made his eventual betrayal not just a stab in the back, but a precise, calculated thrust through the very core of my soul. And Jessica, she was the woman I measured my entire future by. We met at a university gathering, and it was like the world shifted from black and white to vibrant, pulsating color. I didn't just love her, I worshipped her. Every decision, every aspiration, every dream I nurtured was meticulously woven around her presence in my life. The house we lived in wasn't just a house in a quiet Los Angeles suburb. It was the sacred cornerstone of the family I was going to build with her. I bought it for us, investing every spare cent, every late night, every ounce of my effort, personally overseeing renovations to make it our sanctuary. I spent months on the wiring, the plumbing, the tiling, picturing our future children running down the hallways, our laughter echoing off the freshly painted walls. She was my future, my entire horizon, and David was my past, my foundation. I never, in my darkest nightmares, imagined those two pillars of my existence could conspire to leave me with nothing but ashes. The discovery happened on a sweltering Tuesday afternoon. It was a convergence of mundane circumstances and cruel, stupid luck. I'd been called back 2 days early from a crucial work trip to New York. A last-minute flight change that had me arriving back in Los Angeles unexpectedly. I wanted to surprise her. I pictured her face lighting up, the spontaneous embrace. I pulled into the driveway just after noon, the humid air thick with the smell of recent rain. And I saw David's car, that old beat-up Mustang I'd not only helped him fix countless times, but had co-signed the loan for when his credit was utterly shot. I didn't think anything of it. He was family. He was always over. He practically had a key. I walked in the front door, quietly, a box of her favorite pastries from a local bakery clutched in my hand. And I heard it, laughter from our bedroom. Her laughter, but it was different, a throaty, unrestrained sound I'd never heard her make for me, intimately mingled with his low, suggestive murmur. I stood there in the hallway, my shoes still on, the box of pastries growing impossibly heavy in my hand. Every rational thought in my head was screaming denial, offering 1,000 innocent explanations. Maybe they were planning a surprise party for my early return. Maybe they were just talking about family business. But my gut, my soul, screamed the truth. A cold chemical dread, unlike anything I had ever known, washed through me. It tasted like rust and ash. I crept down the hallway, each floorboard grown a thunderclap in the silent house, and I pushed the bedroom door open just a crack. And there they were, in my bed. The bed I had built with my own hands, perfectly chosen down to the thread count of the sheets. The sight didn't register as real at first. It was a surreal tableau, like watching a cheap, sordid drama playing out on a screen, utterly disconnected from my reality. But it was real. The shock was not just emotional. It was a physical blow, a concussive force that stole all the air from my lungs and left a high-pitched, agonizing ringing in my ears. My vision swam. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. A strange, terrifying calmness, a cold, predatory stillness hovering over me. It was a clarity born of absolute devastation. I backed away, my movements unnaturally silent, ghost-like. I walked out of the house, got in my car, and drove. I drove for hours, aimlessly, the box of pastries still on the passenger seat, now a mocking, painful symbol of the trusting fool I had been. I drove until the familiar bustle of Los Angeles faded into the quieter, darker stretches of the east-west road, heading towards nowhere. The betrayal wasn't a clean cut. It was a serrated blade, twisting and tearing through my gut. It wasn't just the physical act. It was the layers of lies, the sickening conspiracy. It was David, my brother, looking me in the eye, knowing every time he shared a meal in my home that he was secretly sleeping with my future wife. It was Jessica, kissing me goodbye for my work trip, her lips still warm from his, knowing he was coming over as soon as my car was out of sight. Every single shared memory, every inside joke, every future plan we had ever made was now drenched in the filth of their deception, forever tainted. I sat in my car for hours, parked on a dusty, abandoned road by the creek, as the vibrant Los Angeles sunset painted the sky in mocking hues. The heart-wrenching grief, the debilitating shock, slowly began to curdle, transforming, hardening into something cold, heavy, and utterly clear. Vengeance. It wasn't enough to just leave her. That would be a private wound, a secret pain that would eat at me forever. It wasn't enough to just cut him out of my life. That would allow them to simply move on, to rebuild their lives free of consequence, probably laughing about my foolishness. What they had done was an act of profound public disrespect to my entire life, to our families, to everything I held sacred. No, their downfall had to be public. It had to be absolute. It had to be a spectacle of shame, so devastating that they could never, ever escape its shadow. And I knew the perfect stage. Our engagement party. It was in 6 weeks, an event they had helped plan. An event where both our families, our friends, everyone who mattered, would be gathered to celebrate our love. It was perfect. They had unconsciously built the gallows. They had handed me the rope, the hood, and pointed me at the perfect targets. They thought they were planning a celebration, but I was now planning a public revenge. The next 6 weeks were the most psychologically agonizing and surreal period of my entire existence. I had to go home and pretend that nothing had happened. I had to play the part of the loving, unsuspecting fiancé, navigating a minefield of emotional manipulation. It was the hardest, most gut-wrenching role I've ever had to play. That first night, I walked back into the house late. David's car was gone, a small relief. Jessica was on the sofa, bathed in the soft glow of the television, feigning concern. "Hey, baby. I was so worried. Where have you been?" "Work trip got cut short," I mumbled, my voice sounding hollow and distant even to myself, as if from a dream. I had to force myself to walk over, to bend down, to press my lips against her cheek. It felt like kissing a snake, its skin cold and slick. Every fiber of my being, screamed in protest. It took every ounce of my self-control not to recoil, not to betray the searing hatred now burning within me. Every touch was a lie. Every shared meal was poison. Every night lying next to her in that bed, our bed, now irrevocably desecrated, was a fresh, agonizing hell. I'd lie there, in the suffocating darkness, listening to her breathe, feeling the phantom presence of him in the space between us. And I would just plan. I would visualize her face, his face, the exact moment the truth came crashing down around them, annihilating their carefully constructed lies. That cold, clear vision of my revenge was the only thing that kept me from shattering, the only thing that allowed me to endure the daily torment. Their arrogance was boundless, and it was my greatest asset. They got careless, cocky. They believed they had a fool, and it made them sloppy, confident in their invisibility. I started leaving my phone on the coffee table, accidentally on, with the voice recorder app running in the background while I took a long shower or stepped out for groceries. I'd return an hour later, my hands clenched into impotent fists as I listened back to their whispered conversations in my own kitchen. Flirtatious texts, casual plans to meet up later, even derisive comments about me. "He's so dense," I heard her say once. "He'd never see it coming." I saved every audio file, carefully labeling them by date and time, the evidence mounting like a slow, inexorable tide. I wasn't just a fiancé anymore. I was a hidden prosecutor building an ironclad case against the two people who thought they had destroyed me. The most damning piece of evidence, the undeniable visual proof, came from a discreet security camera I had installed in the living room months before. A small, almost invisible camera I'd set up after a suspected package theft in our Los Angeles neighborhood. I had almost forgotten about its existence. One sweltering afternoon, they thought I was going to be gone for hours at a crucial work lunch. My lunch was a solitary meal in my car, staring blankly out at the bustling street, but my gut told me to head home. I arrived to an empty house, but the oppressive quiet, the lingering scent of her perfume mixed with his aftershave, confirmed my dread. My gut screamed at me to check the camera's cloud footage. And there it was. Crystal clear high-definition video of them, together, entangled on my sofa, the sofa I'd bought and assembled. It wasn't just proof of the affair. It was a feature-length film of their unholy betrayal, a silent, agonizing masterpiece of their deceit. I downloaded the raw video file, secured it in a dozen different encrypted locations, and then, with surgical precision, I wiped the original footage from the cloud, leaving no trace. This was my ace in the hole, the centerpiece of my entire revenge plan, the visual hammer that would shatter their world. During these 6 weeks, I had to play the part of the happy groom-to-be without faltering. I sat with Jessica and her mother, debating the merits of different flower arrangements for the reception hall, discussing guest lists, agonizing over menu choices. I went suit shopping with David, who had the audacity to clap me on the back and say, "You're a lucky man, Ethan. Jessica is one of a kind. We're going to throw the best bachelor party ever, just for you." The sheer, unadulterated hypocrisy was so thick I could barely breathe, but I just smiled and nodded and let them continue to dig their own graves a little deeper. I let them send out the beautifully printed invitations. I let them excitedly collect the RSVPs from both our extended families, grandparents, aunts, uncles, dozens of cousins, friends from university, work colleagues. Everyone was coming to witness the happy couple celebrate their future. A future I knew was a complete and utter lie. They were actually building the stage for me, setting up the lighting, and inviting the entire audience. All I had to do was write the final, devastating act. The engagement party was to be held at a truly beautiful, upscale restaurant in the heart of Los Angeles, one her parents had rented out entirely. It boasted a state-of-the-art AV system with a huge, high-definition projector screen for a planned slideshow of the happy couple's journey. This was the fatal flaw in their perfect scheme, the chink in their armor. A week before the party, I told Jessica I was making a special surprise slideshow myself, a personal, heartfelt tribute to our love, to be played during the main course. She thought it was the most romantic thing she'd ever heard, her eyes glistening. She kissed me passionately, telling me how lucky she was to have a man who loved her so deeply. The irony was a bitter taste on my tongue. "Just give me a USB drive with the video file," she'd said, "and I'll give it to the event coordinator to make sure it's all set up. No peeking, you hear?" It was too perfect. A gift handed to me on a silver platter. I spent 2 agonizing days holed up in my home office, editing. This wasn't just a video. It was a psychological weapon. I started the video with a well-curated montage of real photos of us, genuinely happy, smiling, on vacations, at family gatherings, looking into each other's eyes with what I thought was true love. I set it to our favorite song, a slow, soulful track that evoked all the memories of our 5 years together. My goal was to lull the audience, and more importantly, Jessica and David, into a false sense of warm, fuzzy security. Then, about 2 minutes in, exactly when the emotional peak of the song hit, the music would abruptly cut, and the screen would go black. This would be the first tremor before the earthquake. I didn't just use the living room video as the sole climax. I built up to it, a crescendo of shame. First, I used screenshots of their text messages, overly enlarged and blown up on the screen, one after another. Texts where they casually called me the fool. Texts where they planned their secret meetings, detailing times and locations. Texts where they fantasized about our wedding being the perfect cover. Then, I inserted the audio recordings, snippets of their whispered conversations, played over a black screen with scrolling, subtitled text. Their own voices echoing the words of their treachery. His voice, her voice, talking about me behind my back, dismissing my feelings, mocking my trust. The final 3 minutes of the presentation would be the living room video itself, unedited, undeniable, played in dead silence. I didn't need to add any music. Their actions would speak for themselves, amplified by the stunned silence of 100 witnesses. I rendered the final video file, saved it onto a brand new unmarked USB drive, and carefully labeled it, "Our Journey, Wedding Prep." Then, with a casual smile, I handed it to my beaming, unsuspecting fiancée. "Don't watch it, baby," I said, a chilling calm in my voice. "I want you to be genuinely surprised along with everyone else. It's a gift." She promised she wouldn't, and I knew she wouldn't, because she had no reason, no possible inkling, to suspect that the gift was a Trojan horse designed to utterly obliterate her life. The night of the party arrived, a symphony of lights, laughter, and carefully constructed lies. The restaurant was exquisitely decorated, filled with the aroma of expensive food and the buzz of excited conversation. It was a perfect, opulent stage for a perfect, devastating reveal. Over 100 people were there. Our closest friends, our extended families, my parents, her parents, David's parents, our grandparents who had traveled from out of state, all gathered to celebrate a future that was already dead. Jessica was radiant in a flowing white dress, her hand resting trustingly in mine, playing the part of the blissful bride-to-be to absolute perfection. David was there, smug and self-assured in a tailored suit, slapping me on the back and making crass jokes about how I was tied down now. They moved through the room, the unwitting stars of the show, and I was the orchestrator, the silent director, waiting patiently for the final, devastating scene to begin. After the lavish dinner, when the champagne flowed freely and the mood was at its most festive, Jessica's father, a kind, honorable man whom I genuinely respected, stood up to give his toast. He spoke eloquently of his happiness, of his trust in me, of his profound joy in welcoming me into his family. "Ethan," he boomed, his voice thick with emotion, "you are the son I never had, and I couldn't ask for a better man to take care of my daughter." Each word was another twist of the knife in my gut, adding another layer of complex pain to the revenge. I felt a fleeting pang of guilt for the collateral damage I was about to inflict upon him, upon my own parents, upon the innocent members of both our families. But it was a necessary cruelty, a precise, surgical strike to cut the deeply embedded cancer out, no matter the cost. And now, he finished, raising his glass, his eyes twinkling. Ethan has prepared a special surprise for my daughter, a look back at their beautiful journey together. A profound hush fell over the room. The lights dimmed, casting long dramatic shadows. Jessica squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "I love you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I looked her directly in the eye, my face a mask of cold, unreadable calm. "You need to watch this," I said, my voice barely audible above the expectant silence. The video started, just as I'd meticulously planned. The montage of our truly happy photos played across the massive screen. Photos of us laughing on beaches, hiking in the hills, celebrating birthdays, looking into each other's eyes, with what I once believed was true love. People awed and smiled, some shedding sentimental tears. Jessica was beaming, a single tear tracing a path down her perfect cheek. Her parents were radiant with pride. My mother was dabbing her eyes with a napkin, her face a picture of maternal joy. Then, 2 minutes in, exactly when the emotional peak of our favorite song hit, the romantic music scratched to a sudden jarring halt. The screen went black. The first, collective gasp rippled through the room. A single text message appeared in massive, stark white letters, stark against the black background. It was from David to Jessica. "He has no idea. He's so clueless, it's almost sad. LOL. A confused murmur, like the distant rumble of thunder, went through the room. I felt Jessica's hand go rigid in mine, her fingers tightening, then going ice cold. Her radiant smile had vanished, replaced by a mask of bewilderment that quickly morphed into pure, dawning terror. The next text appeared, from her to him. "I know. Just have to play the part a little longer. Is he gone yet? See you in 10, winky face." Her father, standing near the screen, his face initially confused, took a stumbling step back, as if he'd been physically struck. His complexion drained of color. Then the audio began, their whispered voices, chillingly amplified by the restaurant's expensive sound system, echoing through the now silent, stunned room. "I feel bad sometimes," Jessica's voice whispered, faint with feigned guilt. "Don't." David's voice, my brother's voice, now warped and venomous, replied, full of casual cruelty. "He doesn't deserve you anyway. You belong with me." I watched my mother's face crumble, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes fixed on the screen in utter devastation. I watched Jessica's father's face contort, from confusion to disbelief, then to a dark, simmering rage. I saw David's parents, my aunt and uncle, looking at their son with a mixture of horror and profound shame. And then, the final, brutal act. The living room video started playing, unedited, undeniable, in dead, absolute silence. There was no sound but the collective gasp, a unified wave of shock that washed over the entire room. It was clear, high-definition proof, irrefutable. I watched Jessica's face drain of all color, becoming a waxy, horrified caricature of her former self, tears now streaming down her cheeks, not of sadness, but of abject panic. I watched David, across the room, physically recoil, knocking over a glass of water, his smug composure, utterly shattered, replaced by an ashen pallor. I felt Jessica try to rip her hand away from mine, but I held it in a grip of iron, unyielding. I leaned in and whispered in her ear, so only she could hear, my voice a cold, venomous hiss. "You will watch this, all of it, just like I did." The video ended, and the screen went black. The silence that followed was the most profound I have ever experienced. It was a vacuum, an oppressive void, filled with the crushing weight of 100 shattered illusions, 100 broken trusts. I let it hang there, suffocating them, for a full 30 seconds, letting the enormity of their shame fully saturate every corner of the room. Then I calmly, deliberately, picked up a microphone from the head table. As you can all plainly see, I said, my voice resonating with cold, clear authority through the silent, stunned room. There have been some significant changes to the wedding plans. I looked directly at Jessica, whose face was a mask of horrified tears and pure, animalistic terror, then at David, who was being stared at with utter contempt by his own parents, his own grandparents, his own brothers. The engagement is off. The wedding is canceled. I dropped the microphone onto the table. The clatter was like a single, definitive gunshot in the silence, sealing their fate. I turned to Jessica's father, whose eyes, now filled with a deep, crushing sorrow, met mine. I am truly sorry you had to witness that, sir, I said, my voice softening only for him. I believe you are owed a full refund for this party. Then I looked at the stunned crowd of our families, their faces a mixture of shock, disgust, and pity. Thank you all for coming. I apologize for the unexpected turn of events. Please enjoy the open bar. My fiancé and my cousin have certainly given you something to talk about. And with that, I turned my back on the smoldering crater of their lives and walked out of that room, leaving them to the merciless judgment of the family they had so carelessly, so cruelly betrayed. It wasn't just a breakup. It was a public revenge, a permanent, undeniable monument to their treachery and my absolute, unforgiving justice. The streets of Los Angeles felt cleaner, lighter, as I walked away. A heavy burden lifted, and a new, colder man forged in the fires of betrayal.